Hi guys, and welcome to today's SEMrush webinar. Today is the SEMrush Toolbox Day, and we're going to be talking about the position tracking tool. And I'm happy to say that I am joined by someone who's been on previously, Mr. Jake Bohall. Thank you, Jake, for taking the time to join us once again. I think your last episode that you were on here got a lot of good feedback, man. So people love the data, and looking forward to hearing some more. So how are things with you?
Fantastic, Craig. Thanks so much. It's been crazy busy over the last couple of months. I think when the presentation we did last was in February, and really? Since then, yeah, it's been a while. It's been a lot more than I thought. It's come kind of quick.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot that's changed. I mean, February, March, April, I think all of those months were full of like algorithm changes and updates and a lot of core updates. So a lot of volatility in the industry. And so for us, I know our company, we've seen a huge influx in new business. I hope the same for everybody watching as people are trying to understand like what's going on and what do we do. And that was kind of the impetus for me here and wanting to do the position tracking tool, because I found every time there was an update, I kept coming back to this tool and using little pieces of it to help understand the story of what was going on, if my client was impacted, how heavily they were impacted, and ultimately whether or not we should be concerned when we saw some of the changes we were seeing.
Yeah, it's just the ever-changing world we live in. You just one day wake up and you go, oh, nothing's happened. Oh, shit. The phone. Oh, I shouldn't be swearing on here, but yeah.
I'll remember that.
No, I've tried to remain semi-professional, but yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It's one of those things you just look at like with one eye open going, oh, and then you know it's all okay and all's good. But it's it's fun.
I mean, personally, as an SEO, like that's the thing that I find most exciting. I mean, I've worked in some other career. I worked in insurance for a while. I worked in the wine industry for a while. And the one thing that like really just grabbed me about SEO was just how everything is always changing. Like there's never the same solution for the same problem. And there's always a new problem and a new puzzle to kind of figure out like why and how and what can I do? And I just love that challenge every day. The stress of going in every morning and not knowing if Google's just said like, man, we're done with, featured snippets all this. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
Like that could change the world. And like, there's a little bit of anxiety, every day about the job, but for the most part, that's what makes it challenging and fun. So,
yeah, I think it keeps you on your toes, and a little bit of anxiety is never hurt anyone, as long as it's not too much. But that's also debatable with Google, whether they do it too often or whatever it may be. But yeah, it's a great tool though, one that I set up. And before I say that and I do my presentation, people are going to say that's not very well set up. This is a test account just for to show people stuff. I don't want everyone having all my data that's watching the webinar, just in case anyone does go. He says he sets it all up and half the shit's I keep swearing again. Half the stuff's missing. Apologies for anyone who's offended by that word. So I think it's a great tool, setting up editing alerts. If you've got movement for a couple of positions, you can be very on the ball with it, which I think is quite a cool feature. I know it probably doesn't mean a lot to many other people, but yeah, just having that alert coming through automatically does that for me and just, gives me a poke in the morning to say, hey, something's changed. You better do some work. So, yeah. But anything new happening with yourself other than doing the Hive Digital stuff? Anything up and coming?
I have the webinar today, and again, thank you everyone for who's coming. I have next week. I'm speaking at PubCon in Las Vegas.
I'll be there, man.
Will you really?
Yeah, I'm not speaking. I'm going to be an attendee, so I'm coming to the networking stuff. It'd be great to have a beer.
So you're going to be buying speakers beers, right? Like that's what attendees do. They buy speakers.
No.
Beers.
I want the speakers to buy me beers. I want the roles to be reversed.
Okay, all right.
But nah, we'll definitely hook up for a beer. It'd be good to.
I'm happy to get you a beer, Greg. It'll be great.
I'm just a typical tight Scottishman. Guys like me don't put our hands in our pockets. But anyway, enough of that talk. I will start sharing my screen. I'll go through the position tracking tool for 10, 15 minutes, and then we're going to hand over to Jake to add his expert advice to how he uses the tool. So any questions that you guys have, make sure you put them in the YouTube chat, and at the end of Jake's presentation, we will ask him as many questions, whether it's relating to the position tracking tool or something else that you spoke about. Fire away. It's as I say, it's a good chance to pick his brain, so take full advantage of it. But I'm going to start sharing my screen now and get the tool up. So first things first, where do you find the position tracking tool? So on your dashboard, you can go to SEO Toolkit and come down to rank tracking, which is a fair bit down the page, and I just need to zoom in. So it's the first one under rank tracking is the position tracking tool. You simply click on it, and it will take you to a dashboard there, and you can set up your own campaign. Now, you can also find the tool under projects as well. So if some of you guys are using multiple tools on the on SEMrush, you can go in here and just click on the position tracking or whatever tool you're going to do. But the visibility one here is the position tracking tool, and we will just click on that. And I've got some sample data in here to show you the tool. So once you've put in your keywords, your location, and all of that kind of stuff, it comes up with this dashboard here. Now, there is also a position tracking app you can get for your phone, so be aware of that. Quite a cool feature if you're one of those people who like to check that stuff when they're out and about at pubs or out and about at meetings with clients or whatever. I think it's quite a cool feature. But we'll talk you through the dashboard. Now, I've only put in a handful of keywords on here, and this just gives the landscape tab here, just gives you an overall view of what's going on, your top keywords, positive impact, and Jake will go into that kind of stuff in more detail when he's presenting. But rankings distribution is probably the one you want to be most focused on, and the yellow or orangey kind of color is positions 1 to 3, and the color changes as per. Down here, you'll be able to see position 4 to 10, 11 to 20, and 21 to 100. And you can also tick the out of the top 100 box as well, and look at some stuff that's maybe opportunities for going forward. So the landscape tool is just giving you a kind of nice dashboard that you can show to people or whatever. But I'm going to click on the next tab along, which is the overview. Now, the overview allows you to add in, if you look here, you can add in other domain names. So I can add in these guys, I can add in, Quantum Marketer, and it's going to give us an overview of what's going on, in terms of competition and whatnot. And you can also use other filters here. You can filter by keyword, you can filter by positions, SERP features, tags, if you add any tags on here, volume, and there's some advanced filters that are on most of the SEMrush tools where you can use some of this kind of stuff if you want to filter out some of the data as well. So the overview tab allows you to have a ranking overview and look at it compared to your competition. So I've not got the competition's data in there. But for example, it would show me my website against Page Optimizer Pro, against quantummarketer.com. and we would be able to see who's doing what and where they're ranking and all that kind of stuff, and give us an idea of, you know, positions. You can look at estimated traffic if that's something that you look at, visibility. So you can have a look at all of this kind of stuff, and you can see the kind of different SERP features that are available. So it gives you an idea of what's available, what opportunities are out there as well. So you can also, over on the right-hand side here, add notes. You'll see just over here, you can add notes and stuff like that as well. Call it what you want, put a description in, and save notes on the account as well. So the overview, quite a simple and easy to understand tab, and it will show you, as I say, visibility, estimated traffic, average position, and it will give you everything here, which you can also, just, it's quite important to tell you, that you can actually filter out some of these kind of different options as well to give you the exact data you want. If if it's only going to be the positions or the visibility or whatever it's going to be, you can filter out the rest of the data on there. So it's really up to you how much or how little you want to show on your overview. Next tab along is the rankings distribution. Now, just going to close that little thing down. Rankings distribution, you can basically see the visibility, the difference, the estimated traffic. Now, for on here, it will show I'm in the top 3 for 3 keywords. I can have a click on that, and it will show me what those 3 keywords are. I can add in keywords here by clicking on the add keywords, and basically have a look at different SERP features and stuff like that. So rank it is basically giving me an overview of what's going on. It's more repetitive data, but rankings in the top 20, rankings in the top 10, rankings in the top 3. And obviously, I think going back to, I think it was Jake's last webinar with us, where he was talking about the flow of how he concentrates on stuff. This is kind of doing something similar where, rankings in the top 10 might be the things that your team, if you give them a process, it might be those keywords that people maybe want to focus on and stuff, because obviously being in the top 3, you're doing well, but there's always going to be opportunities. There's 9 here that are, for me, not ranking that well. Well, they're in the top 10, but they may need work. Do I want to improve them to get more traffic? 100%. That's the goal for everyone, and you'll be able to see top 20, top 100 as well, and figure out a plan of action to tackle this. So that's rankings distribution. Rankings is rankings. It's again, different filters and stuff like that here. You can have a look at your rankings in the top 3, the top 10, and the information here is going to change. You can mess about with all these filters, different SERP features, reviews, whatever it may be, and just use all these kind of tags and stuff to filter out and understand where you're at and filter out whatever information you want to filter out. So again, quite a useful thing, but it's the same data as everything else. It's just drilling it down a little further. Landing pages is the next tab along, and again, you can filter by URL. You can have all URLs. You can have new URLs, lost URLs, and everything else. Now this shows me the landing pages for the search terms that I put in there to rank track, and you'll be able to see there that there's all different types of landing pages for different keywords, and that's just common sense. Is that's the way you want to have things set up, and it will give me my average keyword count, estimated traffic, which is all 0 just now, probably because a lot of this stuff is kind of longer tail keywords that I've put in and stuff that's not too important. Average position, it's giving me a figure here, and obviously it's comparable. It will show you if there's a difference in your average position and give you, an exact position on a specific date as well. And total volume will give you the kind of volume of everything going on there. And as I say, it gives you an idea of how well your landing pages are performing, or maybe you want to get more keywords out of a particular landing page, and you can go in there and add different keywords and stuff. And obviously SEMrush is clever enough to pull that data together and give you 5 keywords for this mass planner review or whatever. So landing page, it just gives you a rough idea of how all that stuff's working. Competitors discovery. So competition map, it's going to, if I go down to the competitors, there's going to be 799 of them. There's literally 80 pages of competition out there. And it's giving me the keywords, average positions, and there's a whole heap of information to be gained from here. So I can basically set, SEMrush as a competitor, and that will obviously start to appear. Their data will start to appear. I'll set this guy as a competitor, and so on. And you can set people up as competitors. If you zoom in closely, you can also blacklist. So, for example, if you don't care about this person, for example, then it will blacklist them on your list, and you just basically go through there, find out who your competitors are. You'll be able to see a competition map, winners and losers, and it's going to show you different guys on here as well who rank for a bunch of search terms out there, and whoever has the most keywords is always going to stick out like a sore thumb on your competition map. Dixon Jones from Majestic there, I know him. I'm not familiar with some of these other websites because I'm in America at the moment. It's pulling in some other data and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not familiar with all of these competitors and stuff like that. But that is what competitors discovery is, and it will just give you an idea of who's got visibility and stuff like that, which I feel is quite important. And these are the ones that have got more green in their bar are going to be seen as more competition or whatever. The lower they are, the less keywords they're ranking for, and less competitive they are compared to the keywords that you rank for. So another cool little part there. Devices and locations. Now, again, you just click on the blue button and you can add in different locations. You can add in keywords from different sources, whether that's analytics or whatever it's going to be. You can also mess about and change it from desktop to mobile to tablet. And you can see here there's Google and Baidu. Hopefully that is the right way to say that. That isn't very specific for me personally, but I'm sure there are people out there who will want to get information from that particular search engine. So you can start tracking the device and location, if you've got different stuff going on there, and you want to see, desktop compared to mobile and stuff like that. So that's quite a cool tab. You just add device and or location and carry on, and the data will pull through for you. The last tab here is featured snippets, and not something I hugely go after at the moment. I probably should. I don't have a lot of time to go after a lot of stuff with my own website. I'm normally busy with something else. But featured snippets can bring in a hell of a lot of traffic and shouldn't be ignored, in my opinion. Any opportunity to grab some more traffic through whether it's featured snippets or some other part of the kind of search engine, then take full advantage of it, and it will show me how many keywords I've got with featured snippets there, and if there's any opportunities for me as well. So obviously I don't rank. I've got one opportunity there. I've not got a lot of data in here, but it would give me opportunities of featured snippets and stuff like that. So who is in the featured snippet as well is quite an important part of this little panel down here. And for that particular search term, SEMrush tutorial, it's SEMrush themselves who've got the featured snippet, and probably rightly so. So if you felt that was something you wanted to try and get, you're going to have to try and wrestle that off them. But I'm sat in position 3 for that particular search term, and the volume and estimated traffic potential, the data is still pulling through. Sorry, I sneezed there. Apologies, but the information will pull through, and it gives you an idea of the opportunities that you've got available on featured snippets. So that is, in a nutshell, the rank tracking tool. Now, a lot of this information can be exported if you're wanting to give it to a client in the usual formats. One other thing that's still loading just now, and I'm not sure why, is you can set up alerts using the button there that's still loading. Now, what alerts does is it can alert you to specific ranking changes. So if something moves by, say, 5 positions or 2 positions, whatever you preset up, it will then let you know that there's been a change, and it's up to you to then log in and identify what that change could be. And it just gives you a nudge in the right direction to carry on and do some work.
Where are the alerts, Craig? I didn't know this.
Up in the top right-hand corner, just next to export, you'll be able to see it. If I zoom in, it's loading just now. I'm not sure what's going on, but there's a button there saying alerts on it. And normally when you click on that button, it will ask you to put in, whatever, whether if rankings change by 2 positions or whatever it might be, and it will then ping you an email saying your ranks have changed. The same way as that, an audit is done, it will say, your score has went from, down to 80% or whatever it might be. So it just prompts you to then go in and take some action if some of your keywords do move around. So alerts, I'm going to try and refresh this actually and see if the alerts button comes up.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about the alerts. I haven't played with it from the rank tracking tool. That's
so
pretty awesome.
Is the alerts. So it says here, set up alerts to immediately react upon changes in your campaign. So you can add up to 10 different alert triggers and get instant notifications by email. So you can, set it to change more than, and you can do 3, 10, 20, 100, or gain more than, or lose more than, or enter the top 3 or leave the top 3, or whatever these trigger points are. You can set that stuff up and just say, for example, it's going to be lose more than 10 positions. You can set that up and just make sure that you enter your correct domain name and changes by more than 10, and just add that in there. So you can add different thresholds, any kind of keyword, or if you're focusing specifically on keywords. For example, if you know a guy that's totally obsessed with 2 or 3 keywords, you can set them up and just make sure that they stay in the top 3. If they drop out, then be aware that this guy may be in your case. So it's a really cool feature, and I think a lot of people should be taking advantage of that. So that is, as I say, the alerts, and that is the tool, just in a kind of brief overview. But I'm sure Jake now will be able to give you information as to how he uses the tool and what he looks for and all the good stuff that people want to hear. So the center stage is now yours, Jake.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Craig. I really appreciate it. And I'm super excited about the alerts, because that I have not played with. So that's super exciting. Okay, I'm just pulling my screen up now to share. If I could just get a quick confirmation that you see it there, Craig.
I do. All looking good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I can see the top of your screen as well, though. I don't know if that's in full screen mode.
Actually, I can try to change that real quick. I'm not sure, because I actually have like a giant monitor, and this is like one
It's fine like that. It's very clear anyway. So it wasn't on full screen, as you can see in the chat there with Kate. But
we'll try one more time just for fun.
But it did look good the way it was. To be fair, I mean, just in case.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's the one.
All right, perfect. I apparently clicked the wrong button. Thank you. This is why we do this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us. And Craig, thanks for the overview of the position tracking tool. There's a couple of areas that I'm going to cover, which probably are a little bit similar in a few places. I hope to dive a little bit deeper and give everyone a bit of insight as to how I use certain features of the tool on a running basis. So just a quick intro. My name's Jake Bohall. I lead the SEO team at Hive Digital, which is the company. It's a search marketing agency that's working to help businesses that we feel create a better world. So have to give Hive a sweet plug. So to start, I kind of wanted to start off by talking a little bit just the hierarchy of SEO. So when I'm approaching SEO for a particular client, we see the kind of the first thing, that foundation, is making sure that the search engines can crawl and discover our site. That's where we kind of apply the majority of technical SEO, just making sure the search engines can see and understand things. And then we dive into more like the content, the relevance, and making sure that there's a link between the intent of a user that's going to be visiting our site and the content that's on a page. And then the cherry on top is if you can get some links or authority, which are going to establish sort of this order that you're more authoritative than other sites, and ideally, obviously, put you into a better ranking position. So now it's probably obvious to most of you, but keywords are considered everywhere. And that's why they get so much attention. After all, what's the point in doing SEO if you're not trying to rank for something? So when we're looking at crawling or discovery, typically the first signal to the search engine there is the keyword. Does it appear in the domain? Does it appear in URL segments? And then the majority of the work that we do with keywords is tied into the content or relevance, and making sure that we're targeting keywords again that are mirroring the content of the page with the intent of the user. And we do that through things like improving our titles, our H1s, the body, so things like the videos, actual text, images, alt text, and that sort of thing. So the keywords really weave in to all aspects of the content of the page. And then with link development, generally we're looking for things like, do the keywords exist in the source content that's linking back to us? Are we using them in anchor text and those types of things? But as SEOs, we're typically first looking at keywords. And in my opinion, I believe that keywords often get way too much credit and attention, and that we end up seeing our SEOs spending more time working on the top of the pyramid, so trying to address things like links, and less time on content and crawling discovery. So I did a presentation a couple weeks ago for the Raleigh SEO meetup, and I talked about is SEO dead. One of the things that I covered was keywords as a focus, and how there's, because of the way that SEOs have tended to focus so heavily on keywords, it's created this sort of toxic environment where we try to do things, or we've overused things, and in the long run we've made them obsolete or ineffective. So some things like keyword density. I actually had a client approach me because another SEO working on one of their projects had specifically told them keyword density metrics that they needed to hit. Like it was an audit that the client did behind me, and the audit report came back and said, your H1 tags are out of order, and your keyword density is not nearly as high as it should be for these target keywords. In which I immediately obviously responded. I was like, well, H1 tags in or out of order, not really a big deal. Sure, it would be ideal to have them in a certain order, but not on the priority list. And the fact that this SEO just mentioned keyword density, pretty much discredited everything that I could possibly imagine for them as an SEO. Now, that being said, you have to have some keyword density, right? We have to include the keyword on the page, or some closely related variant if we want to be able to rank for that particular term. But the idea of focusing on a specific keyword has sort of shifted away And now it's more of a focus on an intent or covering the topic as a whole. So if keywords are less relevant, then why do we track them? Like, what is the point? I'm sitting here telling you I think keywords are kind of a garbage metric in some ways, and this sort of stuff. We focus too much on it. But then I'm gonna now present on why we should be tracking them. So there's a couple of obvious ones, right? Like the C-suite, like some guy top level, like he's looking at those 3 keywords that I will be setting some alerts up for on a couple of my clients. But he's looking at or she is looking at this specific set of keywords where they go and they Google it every day, and every time they Google themselves, they send you an email that says like, hey, we're 1 position higher, 1 position lower than the last time, and they obsess over it. That's one problem, but by getting rank tracking in place and ideally things like these alerts, you can sort of stem or at least be aware of those types of changes and be able to report on bigger picture items than just the keywords that the C-suite's looking at. Monitoring overall health of the site, looking for growth opportunities, looking at trends versus problems. Sometimes, all of your rankings go down, and it's not necessarily the worst thing. And we'll cover that scenario in a minute. And then obviously when you're tracking keywords, then you can be more competitive because you're seeing like, this person's ranking better than me. I want to take them over. Competition is inherent in SEO. Keywords give all of us, all these SEOs, like little badges. Like I get to go to conferences and talk with my friends, be like, hey, have you ranked a site for mesothelioma? And some of them will say yes. And I'll say, have you done it on a $2,500 a month budget? And everybody says no, and I feel pretty amazing. Or have you done it for credit cards? How about on a 5K budget? Granted, that was like 10 years ago when you could just spam the heck out of Google with links. I don't do that anymore. So if you'd like to rank for either of those terms, it's going to take a lot more money today. So for most of our clients, because these things are important, the C-suite reporting, being able to track trends and growth opportunities and so forth, one of the first things that I do with any of the onboarding on our clients is either have them share an existing SEM project with us if they have it, or if not, we'll create a new project and share it back with them. There's obviously, as you can see from the dashboard here, like when you create a project, there's a ton of cool features, but we're focusing on position tracking today. You also notice in these slides, I've blurred things out. That's just because I'm going to be showing you, in some cases, some data that has real client stuff in it. And if they saw their name, they'd probably sue me. So I try to avoid that. So my typical path is I go through the project, I go through into position tracking. And then if this is new, so if this is a new client, you're just going to be prompted with the setup. And I wanted to cover this a little bit. The first part of the setup is choosing, the search engine and the device. I definitely recommend that you choose the device that is your current predominant traffic source. You can easily pull this data from Google Analytics or Search Console and just look at, am I getting more traffic from mobile or desktop? And does that reflect my desire? For some clients, like I have a lot of B2B clients where almost all of their traffic is on desktop. So I don't really want to waste my time caring so much about mobile when it's about 20 to 15 to 20% of their overall traffic. Whereas in a lot of e-com spaces where it's B2C, we're looking at like 75, 80+% on mobile traffic. And so when we're doing the rankings tracking, so obviously we want that to reflect what we're actually targeting or seeing most often for our users. There's also an option where they'll pull, if your business is showing up in the local pack, in the organic results, it'll populate that into the rank tracking tool. I always set that up anyway, just even though it says optional, because there is a toggle inside of SEMrush where you can say like, I want to exclude that data. So go ahead and include it if you've got it. So step one is just setting this up. For me, it's Google, US, and English. I think I missed a page. Let's track it. Oh, and then the next step is going to be adding your keywords. So when you're here, step 2, keywords. I did the SEMrush. I think it was Toolbox number 5. Yeah, and there's a link here. Toolbox number 5 with Craig back in February, and we focused on how to use the keyword gap tool in SEMrush to identify keywords that you want to target and how to determine priority keywords and action to take. If you haven't watched that webinar, I highly recommend that you do so. It's one of the phases that we use when we're adding keywords to track, because obviously if we're doing a keyword gap analysis and identifying terms that we want to take action on, for those keywords, you want to make sure you're tracking it so that after you take that action, you can report back to the client or report back internally and say, like, here's the keyword group where we did X. These were the particular results for it. And that's one of the joys with tags inside of SEMrush, is that you can start to add tags to particular keywords. So in this case, you can see here like the sandbox to add keywords. I typically start by either pasting from like the keyword gap analysis that we do, or using a combination of Search Console data, or importing directly here using SEMrush. They make it really easy. Typically, I'll try to group. So here, when you're adding keywords, you can add a tag. I typically try to group keywords by things like brand, executive KPIs. So like I have like a specific tag that gets associated to every keyword that I know the executive team is frantically searching all the time. You can have multiple tags on a keyword. And so you can either do this here in the sandbox, or you can just import a CSV file where it's in this format, keyword tags associated with it. And then you import. And again, tags are really important. Don't skip out on those. You can always come back and edit them later. So don't feel like you have to get every keyword and every tag done right out of the gate. But do your best as quickly as you can. So here's an example, and these people don't care if you see some of their data. So here's an example where we pulled from SEMrush the domain report, and it automatically sucked it in. And I'm going to go ahead and tag it with like SEMrush data, as you can see here, just so that I can kind of bucket. I do this with GSC data as well. So sometimes I'll just import every keyword that's getting impression share in GSC, just so I've got a baseline to start. But I'll tag that with GSC because I might not want to include, every keyword I've ever gotten an impression for, and some of the reporting that I do up to the C-suite. So again, using that tagging is really helpful. Also, don't go overboard. You obviously can't track everything, and as much as SEMrush would love for you to pay them for more and more keyword space, at some point it just isn't logical. In 2007, there was a report from Google. I believe it was suggested that it was like 20 to 25% of the queries they see every day are completely new, never seen before. And then in 2013, John Wiley, who's one of the lead designers for Google Search, said that number was 15%. And then Ben Gomes, who's the VP of engineering in 2017, when they were talking about some of the fake news issues, then reaffirmed that it's 15%. So 15% of the keywords searched on Google have never been seen before. So the idea that you could use any tool to inject keywords into this and cover every keyword your site could get rankings for is incredibly unlikely. So, kind of focus on things that you're going to want to build around, whether it's as a KPI or a strategy. And those are the ones that you're going to want to track. And again, you can always go back and edit keywords. This is a screenshot from where I was trying to do edit keywords. You can pull from other campaigns at SEMrush and that type of thing. The one caveat is that if you start changing keywords or adding them to particular groups, some of your trending graphs are going to see like huge spikes. And I'm sure you've seen this, like when SEMrush launches a keyword update, there'll be like a big spike in visibility or positions tracked and that type of thing. The position tracking campaigns operate in a silo that is separate from the general, organic traffic data that you see elsewhere in SEMrush. So when SEMrush like adds a bunch of keywords to their database, it's not going to have any impact on your position tracking that's set up in the project, which is another good reason to do that instead of just relying on the others, because you can do you can be a little bit more consistent, even when SEMrush is making changes and updates to their platform. Let's see. Yeah, so changing keywords. So if you do change the keywords in position tracking, you will see that similar, drop and an increase if you add or subtract keywords from particular groups. So once you add your keywords, it takes a few minutes for SEMrush to go ahead and pull that initial data. And then it asks you, or then you can see here at the top, there's this thing for adding competitors, which Craig mentioned a moment ago. Obviously, we love competition. When you first set up, you're not going to have any historical data. So you saw this on Craig's screen share where, it was just like there's today. and there's no improve versus declined. Like you're always going to see this the first time you set up. It's kind of like the same way. So when you first set up a Search Console account, there's no historical data available, that type of thing, where it does start tracking from this point forward. So just do remember that it's not going to be pulling historical data. It's from the date you start tracking. So you see the option to add competitors. We definitely want to do this because this is what starts setting the stage for determining if it's just me when ranking shifts happen or traffic starts to move due to seasonality. Or in fact, Google oftentimes will boost certain sites during seasonality when they know this particular site is a Christmas only site. So maybe they didn't show up for, a keyword like golf clubs all year long. And then when Christmas time comes along, it's christmasgolfclubs.com. And they start showing up in search results. So you can start to see some seasonality and how that adjusts between you and all of your other competitors. So you need to make sure that you have competitors in place. So really awesome, SEMrush automatically suggests competitors based off of keyword crossover. I definitely recommend looking at it's keyword crossover for organic and AdWords. I definitely recommend that you for this part of the report, maybe focus on like 5 or 10 to start, and only those that are really closely aligned with your business and targeting the same types of customers that you are. And also know that this is going to make sure that we get better information for decisions later, because if you're comparing yourself to the biggest person, in the space, you're always going to have a itsy bitsy teeny market share. And what would normally be a large, like volatile change for you is going to be a kind of a flat change for them across the board at times. And so it's not really an apples to apples comparison when you're trying to figure out, especially things like, did this algo update impact me or everyone else? And then also, after you've done a couple of rounds of keyword improvements, you can obviously go back and add competitors. There's a competitor tab, which suggests some that you can also go back and edit as well. Now, one of the things to be mindful of and why it's important you don't just click the plus sign next to all of these. A lot of times you'll see Wikipedia and Amazon and so forth showing up in there. So again, unless you're actually competing with Amazon, and you don't want to add them. Maybe you just have like a product line and Amazon happens to have like a little tiny section of giant Amazon that's focused on, houseplants. You don't want to be competing with them. So once you have this competitor data in there, that dashboard, that overview starts populating with information like this, where you can see, in this case, this is a snapshot, so I don't have change over time in here. But you can see you want to be up and to the right. That's kind of the general premise for everything in SEO. In this case, you can see where I am with my competitors. You can get an idea if there's some huge outlier. But generally, it's nice to kind of see yourself clustered in the middle of competitors when you start out. At least that's how I like to do it, because then that kind of gives me I want to be as good as those guys, and I want to make sure that the people behind me aren't catching up. If you only pick bigger fish, then you'll miss out on the competition that's in your back door. And if you only look at them, then you'll miss out on all the opportunities that you can discover by using some of the features and position tracking. So over time, the data starts to fill out. So here's one where we can see, I think this is from, this is a week example, and I think the next one is a little bit longer period. But you can start to see now, so over the course of this particular week, we can see we gained 6 new keywords in the top 3, lost 1, gained 19 new keywords in the top 10, lost 10, and some overviews. So this is really helpful because at any point you can modify this date range to say, I want to see the last 7 days, last 30 days, last 90 days, the last year. And so if you're reporting back to client or trying to assess hey, we did this site update on this particular day. Did we notice a decline or any significant change following that? Once this tracking is in place, you can always go back and start looking at some of the snapshots and identifying here in a nice, easy to understand bucketed format. These were the changes, my top rankings. Here are the keywords that saw positive gains. Here are those that saw negative gains. And here are the keywords that are really bringing me, the most. I have, they're my number 1 positions, that type of thing. And know that date change, you can do that across any of these tabs. So, whether you're in the landscape overview or whatever, that date stuff applies. There's also under type, there's organic. This is also a cool feature where you can switch and look at how your position tracking or how like some of these things are impacted from the paid side. So this is a longer period. So this one's over the course of, it looks like August to September. And you can see, like in this case, like it's a pretty happy client as far as I'm concerned. You know, their average position is consistently improving. Their estimated traffic is consistently improving. Visibility is improving. And so you want to be able to see those long-term things, and you want to be able to report on it. And this gives you that kind of quick insight. And you can also easily drill in for each of these buckets. You can drill in and flag like which keywords are new, which ones did we lose. You're probably going to end up getting those questions from the C-suite if you show them a report like this. So just know that information is readily available for you. Now, my favorite, or at least one of my this is probably one of my favorite features in SEMrush, and that's that with the competitiveness tool, or with the competitors added in the rank tracking tool, it's looking at your visibility trends, which is essentially like if you're all of your keywords are in position 1, then your visibility is 100%. So that's kind of important to understand. So the more rankings you have in higher positions than your competitor, obviously the more visibility that you have. Estimated traffic is just like the click-through curve, estimates on how much traffic they think you might be getting for those for each of these sites based off of the keywords that have been selected for the report. And then average position, know that like if someone's in position 100 and position 1, like their average position is 50. And if you've got 2 keywords and both of them are in position 50, you're also going to have the same average position. So a lot of times, like average position is not the best tell-all, but when you kind of start pulling these together, that's when it gets to be a bit helpful. Now, one of the reasons I like this so much is because we have a number of different kinds of scenarios that often happen. So like an algorithm update rolls out, and I want to know afterwards, like, hey, how did that impact us? And so I'll look at something like this, or if we have, we know that we're improving our rankings, or we just did this, release, and we want to make sure, like, hey, is that having a positive impact? And so what I'll do is I'll look and see, if most everyone else is flat, and I am increasing, then I am an anomaly in the fact that I have improved and my competitors have not. And know that this is where the tag gets really helpful. So for example, I'm looking specifically at the KPI keywords, in this case that an executive gave me and said, this is what we care about. This is where we see our competitors. We want to beat the pants off of them. And so we set up those particular keywords, tagged them with KPI. And now when I filter by this particular KPI, I can now see trends over time for that specific group. Now, this gets helpful as well when we start looking at, and I've pulled a couple of different time samples and things like that here. But for example, here we can see, maybe I have a client who's saying like, all of my rankings are flat. It's been, 2 months and I don't see any movement. Sometimes that happens. And like from the general standpoint, especially in some of these higher competitive spaces where maybe all of our keywords are in the top 5 positions. And so in this case, we can see that we in fact moved up our visibility by a little bit, and our competitors all pretty much stayed the same. So it's kind of safe to say like, what, this space, like there's not a lot of rankings movement happening now for anybody. However, when you look specifically at our site, we have more visibility growth, more visibility change in a positive direction than anybody else. And that's really helpful, because if you're just looking at rankings and saying like, oh, well, none of my positioning is really moved, and you're looking at it in a silo for yourself, then you don't really have that big picture. In much the same way when an algorithm update rolls out, and then suddenly you look in and you see like, hey, you stayed steady, or maybe even you moved down a little bit, but you start to see things like everybody else moved down a lot more than you did. And so that's we actually saw a lot of this when like the medic update rolled out, and then we had clients who would say like, hey, like we lost all of our rankings, what's going on, what can we do? And the first thing for us to determine is whether or not this is a systemic, like, is this because of the algo update? Is it something unique to us? Or is this something that's systemic across the search space as a whole for this particular vertical. And while, yes, we certainly have things that we need to work on and improve, there isn't any particular item here or any particular issue with our site that indicates that we have a serious problem. And so that's where this really becomes helpful, is when you see other people are moving down at an equal pace than you, or ideally maybe you're not moving down as heavily or as aggressively as they are. It can kind of help hedge some of those concerns with the client, and you can tell them like, hey, listen, everybody took a hit. This is part of the algorithm update. We're dissecting, trying to figure out what exactly the issue is. Now, at the same time, if everybody stays flat and you go down, then you're going to have to answer for that, because like obviously you've done something wrong, or the developers have done something wrong, but like you've been singled out as a problem. And that's why it's important that you're looking at sites that are similar in scope and that type of thing, so that these types of comparisons and that type of data extraction or interpretation is valid. Because if you have Amazon and so forth in here, are a bunch of little bitty tiny competitors, then this isn't going to really paint an accurate picture for you. So another part of is it just me? So the keyword tracking, when you're in the reporting there, you can actually start to filter and say like, I just want to look at like visibility changes. And you can see like if there's particular keywords, like, in this case, I'm looking at a certain keyword. I can see it has all these features, and I can look across the board. So here's one where for this one keyword, everybody is taking a hit. We're kind of middle of the road. So there's, especially if you pull this into like a spreadsheet, you can start playing with it and flagging and highlighting some of these a little bit different. There's also some of the advanced filters where you can look and say like, I want to see where the position change is, greater or less than this for me and them and so forth. And so you can start to flag, are there particular keywords between me and my competitors where we're all losing? We had a similar instance where I think this was in February, actually. There was a change. I believe it was more based around like the intent and the search space. And so a lot of like the comparison best, X company versus X company type of keywords, our client who had historically dominated in that space suddenly disappeared. And the sites that were ranking were like Capterra and Software Vice and like these other kinds of sites that are true comparison sites. They're, unbiased and these sorts of things. And so we were able to quickly look through the KPI report and flag like, okay, it wasn't just us losing out on all of the keywords with best in them. It was everybody in our space that is, a manufacturer or a producer or that type of thing. And we could better make that case, because when the C-suite came and we just kind of pointed it out as like, oh, here's an example, everybody's gone, like they didn't believe us. But when we could pull this report and show them how that actually applied across a large scope, and that was a pattern that indicated a greater change with Google and how they were treating, brands portraying themselves as unbiased with content, then that picture became clear and better to understand for the client. So, it's one of those things where, sometimes everyone improves, but watching the tool closely will help you from getting overexcited. So maybe you see like a spike, and then you notice like everybody else saw a spike too. So there, maybe a good example here is like when Wikipedia kind of started to fall down in some of the rankings. So everybody started to get a boost. Or if a top competitor, we've had instances where the client gets excited because like their rankings go up. And then we notice like a couple of competitors, have done something terrible and they've disappeared. And all the other competitors that we were watching, we've all moved up and taken over their rankings. So being able to flag and watch that was certainly very helpful. Another awesome thing, the rankings distribution. There's a ton of information in this tool that make it reporting to clients so easy. So, I can grab for each of the competitors that I have listed and show like, this is how many keywords we have in the top 3, top 10, so forth, versus the competitors. And obviously, hopefully you're winning out on all of those. And you can slice this data based off of like the KPIs or the tags that you have, specific competitors. You can filter by keywords. You can say every keyword with X in it. And see exactly how many or what percentage of those keywords you're ranking for in comparison. The landing pages tab, this one, I love the fact because it gives you the keyword count by page. I always sort by this, and especially if you start looking in the lost column. So here we have all URLs. You can also look in the lost column and see the keyword counts and start to flag like if one page lost a bunch of keywords, then that particular page probably has an issue, and that's something you need to go look at. Sometimes developers break things. This is a good way to help help kind of find it. We've got some other tools that we use for like live monitoring, like the Content Kings of the world and so forth. But this, when we're doing diagnostics on rankings, this is invaluable for trying to identify that. And a lot of times we'll piggyback on pages that are earning. So in this case, we've got, this page has 23 more keywords than it had in the period before. And so then we'll apply like the Pareto principle approach towards prioritizing improvements for things like conversion rate optimization on this page, because we know that it's growing, it's getting more attention, it's getting more links. And obviously this is especially wonderful if these are pages that you've been working on, because then you can flag those to the C-suite. I kind of have a couple slides I'll move through here, but you can export that data into Excel and start to pivot it, so you can look at things like the average positioning or like position changes. So you don't have to necessarily do this in the SEMrush tool. Everything in SEMrush you can export almost always, and play with that in Google Sheets or Python or whatever fun tools you want to play with. I said the first thing that made me so excited was the visibility and tracking that over time. The other one is featured snippets. It's just awesome that we have. There's a couple of other tools that I've tried to use, and they're either incredibly slow or they're not really great at like reporting in a roll-up way that I can present to the C-level. And SEMrush is doing a good job at improving this feature to be able to do that. So highlighting things like, how many opportunities are there? So we pick the opportunities, we choose the ones, maybe we sort by the traffic potential. That's typically the approach that I take. The ones that have the highest traffic potential, those are the ones we start looking at first. The kind of pro tip there is obviously you want to always look at the site that's ranking and taking that featured snippet and ask yourself honestly, can I do a better job at answering this question than them? If you can't, then don't waste your time trying. If you can, then absolutely put the effort into it. And this is another one where you can take that and dump it into a pivot table. I do this a lot just so I can look at, because you can pull like the average CPC and things like that, and average search volume out of SEMrush and that export. And so you can start grouping pages by the particular keywords, or sometimes there's keywords across multiple pages. So you can start to kind of group by like, okay, from a dollar standpoint, like this keyword, I don't know what it was, Toyota or something, but this keyword has an average of $20 a click. If I can steal that featured snippet, being honest with myself and my better, then that would be a very valuable keyword for my client to have. And so, take this, export the data, play with it in a lot of different ways, but know that you can pivot that data in a way that helps you prioritize around particular goals. I want more valuable traffic. I want higher volume of traffic. And that includes things like the positioning. So you can start to filter like only things where I have position, 5 or better, so that I obviously have a much higher opportunity for featured snippets and that type of thing. So overall, I have lots of love for SEMrush. There's always ways that they can improve in some of their tools, but they're very responsive and they're moving quickly to implement improvements and always releasing something helpful. I didn't even know about the alerts for rankings. So every time I turn around, there's something new and amazing in SEMrush. They've got the content analyzer stuff that they're releasing now, which I think is incredible, and I can't wait to be able to dump prioritization from like featured snippets into content analyzer. And another one that I recently discovered is they have this app. So if you're excited and if your C-suite has they have access to the project in SEMrush, like tell them to download the app, because it's going to give things like the visibility and estimated traffic. And as long as you're doing well and you're doing your job right, then you really genuinely don't have much to be concerned with. And you can give them this kind of insight so that it's right at their fingertips. So that was all that I had to present today, Craig. Do you have any questions, or are there questions from the audience?
Sadly, we don't actually have time for questions. Believe it or not, it's 10 o'clock. But there wasn't a huge amount of questions that were coming in, to be honest. So sometimes people just digest the information, and hopefully if they've got questions, they can maybe ping you on one of your social media channels and whatever. But again, I think when you're presenting what you're presenting, I think people just sit back and listen. So yeah,
and that's my Twitter handle there. If anyone has questions, I did see somebody asking about volume data. As we mentioned, like 15% of queries have never been seen before, which means they all have a volume of 1 when they start. And a lot of times that's not going to show up in the tool. So know that if it is like a valuable keyword, it's typically going to have volume. And if it's not reporting in there, then it's probably something that maybe only happens every once in a while, and I probably wouldn't prioritize it. And I certainly probably wouldn't burn my tracking credits on a keyword with no volume, because odds are like you're probably going to rank well for it if you go after it, because nobody else is searching for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. But that's Jake's details on the screen anyway. But thank you again for joining us, Jake. I think it's, again, another great insight into how you work and how you're using the tool. So thanks once again. And thanks once again, everyone else, for watching. And lots of people are asking questions about the tool specific and everything else. And the guys on the YouTube chat answered them all perfectly. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you again, Jake.
Thank you, Craig. And thank you, SEMrush. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
Cheers.